Hi, welcome to the second video in which I'm developing a full mobile application from backend to frontend, backend with Golang and frontend with Flutter. If you want to go a little bit more about the design that I'm following, the architecture, or the reasons behind this series of videos, then check the first video. Now, in the last video, I just completed the register user service. However, there are some changes that I'm gonna make because as we can see in the database, the email has to be unique. However, I won't leave that constraint at the database layer. As I said in the previous video, I like to have all my business logic in the application because, yeah, using procedures, using constraints at the database layer, it's awesome for database administration and that kind of stuff. But for software development, I always prefer to have the business logic at the application layer. So in this case, we're gonna have to verify that the email is unique at the application level. So first of all, here, after we check the password, that the password is correct, that it contains at least one digit, and that we generate the hash for the password. Then I think before generating the hash to the password, we have to confirm uniqueness email, confirm email uniqueness. For this, we'll have to create a new repository method, which is in the domain, something like get user by email. This takes, whoa, here I have something missing. Yeah, I just noticed that here I have to pass a context. I have to add a context to all the methods that I have here, which is context.context, because yeah, in Golang the context is pretty important, and we have in the service layer the context won't be that much used. However, at the database layer it will be used because we are gonna use the context in order to pass the context to the database in order to have a deadline, a timeout. In this case, the timeout is given by the request, which has a timeout of 1 minute. So if the database takes more than that minute doing any kind of operation, then the operation will be terminated. So get user by email, context, then we have to get the email, which is a string, and that's all. Now, what do we return? We will return an error in case that there was some error, or a pointer to an entity. And then I'm gonna create here models. Now, I want to clarify something. For instance, in some projects, people have like entities, DAOs, data models, DTOs. I mean, a lot of type of models. What I want to say is that, for instance, in a previous project, I had data models that represent the tables in the database. I had entities, which are business classes, basically, because it was a Dart project. So I had classes there, and I had DTOs and all this kind of stuff. However, here I don't want to have that differentiation between data models and entities. I want to treat all of them as models, which is something that could be treated as a business model, or that can be a translation of a direct table in the database. I will be explaining that in the process. For now, let's simply add package domain out, and then let's add the model, which will be type user out is a struct which contains an email, which is a string. It also contains hash, which is a string, but I don't want the hash. I should never retrieve the hash from the, no, I should. Yeah, I should. Hash is a string. I also have, let me check the database. About provider, about ID, and user ID. Well, the user ID, I do need it because it's the ID. Let's leave it simply like ID. This is of type UID. And then let's type our Auth provider. Here I have to put it in capital letter. So Auth provider, which is of type string, and Auth ID, which is of type string. I think for now that's all. Yeah, let's leave it like that. Here I will add created add, which is of type date, and this can't be nullable. However, I'm checking something here because this can be null because the user cannot exist. Yeah, I got it. So the reason why this design is like this is because, how do I explain it? Because this user ID is not the primary key. As you can see, the primary key is a different one. Because the thing is that the application is a coupled application. However, the end user can, for instance, if the user had a breakup, then he can continue using the application with other partner, etc. However, the account is the same. This one will be the same. What will change is this one, because this one is the one that is connected to the specific couple. So if this couple had a broke up, then this user becomes unusable, but it will still be stored for the past, because this ID is the one that all the other parts of the database are referencing to, and I want to keep that data. So that's why I won't change or do anything with this user. I simply will create another user for the new couple of the user, and this simply will become inactive. And then I will connect this user out to the new user created. That way this is different from this. So I'll add that foreign key here, user ID, as a UID. I think this may change later, but mainly because of these two fields that I right now don't know pretty well how to manage them. But okay, for now let's leave it like that. So let's go back to the domain, and this will return a type of user out. First of all, I'm gonna add the postfix model to all my models in order to be more explicit. Now it seems that I have to add the context, which is air.context. And where else? And then I have to implement in my implementations, I have to add the context, because now I am asking for it. And that will be all. Now let's go to the repository. Here the same thing. No, ctx context.context. Let's copy this right here, and now let's implement the other one, the one to check the uniqueness of Postgres repo. It's get user by email. It receives a context, it receives an email, and it returns a pointer to domain out, user out model, or an error. Why does it return a pointer? Because I want to be able to return nil in case that the user wasn't found. Return nil for now. Now let's come back to the service. So where was I? Confirm uniqueness. So here it will be s.get out repo, get user by email, and then let me check something. I'm thinking about something. Context email. Well, the context is ctx. Email is email, but this weren't what I was checking. So this receives either if user.error it's equal to. Now in case user is different to nil, then we have to return empty and an error that the email is already in use. Error email already used. Errors.new, the email already has an account associated. Yeah, we'll return that error right here. And now, else if error is different to nil, then we'll simply return and I want to do something right here, but I don't know where to place this error, because I want to be returning an error if an user wasn't found. However, I don't know how to manage the error, because if I store it right here in the repo out, then I will be linking my service to the repository, and that's not what I want. So I'm gonna create here in my domain some errors, which are some errors that are domain errors. It's of time domain out. So then we're gonna do something like var this has to be public error no user found email. This will be equals to errors new no user found with that email. Yeah, now we're gonna check if error is different to nil, but also errors.is error, and this will be domain out. So if there was an error that wasn't this one, because this one is the one that we want, then we'll simply return, do a fallback of that error. Yeah, I think this is the flow that I want, and yeah. Then we continue hashing the password, and then we have to pass here the context, and I think that will be all. Now it's working fine. Now here we have to add also the context, but to add the context I have to receive it, and so then I have to pass it right here, and yeah, perfect. So I have it now. Now let's implement the repository. Let's come to the repository. Now we have to receive here a database which is of type DB. Yeah, it's, let me remember, how is it, what's the package that has the DB type? SQL. It's the SQL package, SQL.db. yeah, this will be a pointer to a database which we will receive it in our constructor, and we'll assign it. It's equal to db. Now, once we have our database, we can do queries indeed. So first, let's do the create user out. For that, we have to do something like r.db.exec context, because I want to pass the context, ctx, then the query will be something like how is it the double line, the multiple lines string interpolation? I want to check that in my previous project. It's in repository. Let me check any repository. Oh yeah. Okay, so it's like this. Insert into users out. I don't like to use any type of ORMs. Usually I prefer to have it as plain SQL. And for the modularity and replacing aspects of the code, there is no issue, because if I decide to change from Postgres to MySQL, yeah, I will maybe need to rewrite all the repository. However, I prefer that, even though it may take more time, but to also have all the power to control the exact SQL queries instead of using an ORM, which an ORM could abstract the let's say the repository pattern. However, it's very limiting. So inserting to users out, we're gonna insert, let me move this into a second monitor so I can check it. The ID, email, hash, or out. We're gonna leave it like that. Simply these three, because I guess that when I decide to implement the vote, I will use a different method for that. And then the created add values, and this will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now let's pass the values. The values will be ID, email, hash, and time.now. Now this will return as equal result or an error. So result error is equal to this. Let's do if error is it's different to nil, then we'll return the not this error because this is a technical error. I want an abstract error, which will be something like let me create it here, like bar. Here will be the errors. Error creating user, errors.new. There was an error creating the account for the user. Yeah, I don't care what was the technical error. I mean, for the user shouldn't know what was, simply that an error occurred in that specific step. Now after that, if there was no error, then the result, I like to check the number of rows affected, because that's the confirmation of how many of if the query was successful. So rows affected, which will be 1. So in case that error is different to nil or num is equal to 0, then the same thing, error creating user. And in any other cases we return nil because everything went completely fine. Now create session, it's pretty similar. Let's do result error is equal to error db dot exec context. This will be the context. I have to pass first the context ctx, then let me check the session information. It's insert into sessions in the fields ID, token, device, OS, expires add, created add, and last used. Yeah, and the user ID, obviously user ID. The values will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8. And after this, we're gonna pass the ID, then the token, then the device, then the OS of the device, then the expires add, then the created add, then the last use add, which will be right now also, and the user ID. Perfect, that will be all. So now let's confirm that the error is nil. Error creating session, errors.new, there was an error creating this session for the user, and this will be the error that I will be returning right here. Now otherwise I'm gonna do the same thing about checking the number of rows affected, and then I'm gonna be returning this error, and if everything went fine, then return nil. Right here everything it's looking good. Now let's do the retrieve method, which will be something like error.db. This is exec, no, this is select query row context, because I only care about one, ctx, then will be select what do I want to select? I want to select what does this have? Let me move this right here. So I want to select the ID, the email, the hash, the auth provider, the auth ID, and here I want to add the created add, which will be of time created add, and the user ID. Yeah. From users out where email it's equal to this one, and it's this one. Now after this, what does this return? A row, which is this one, and now we have to scan that row in our user out model. So I'm gonna create a model, it's equal to domain out dot user. If I'm gonna return a pointer, I'm gonna create it right here, new, and then what I'm gonna do, model it's equal to domain. And now, yeah, I could simply do something like this. However, this means that once it returns the struct, since it's getting out from the stack memory, it has to be moved to the heap memory, and that is done by Golang. However, this is like creating the heap memory right here is like saving that one step, and it may not affect that much the performance, but I prefer to have it like that. So let's do something like that, and then let's scan the row. So will be row.scan. I'm gonna scan it in model.id. Here is model. Here in model.email. Here in model.hash. Here in model.auth provider. Here model.auth ID, here model.created@, and here model.user ID. Yeah. So this will return an error. Now I could check the error here in an if statement because I don't have any external effects. However, since this line is already pretty large, pretty long, I mean, I want to check it in a different line. If error is different to nil, then let's return the error, which is row select. No, first of all, I have to here, before creating it, I want to check if I had an error retrieved. Oh no, the error is retrieved at the scan point. So the error could be error not rows. So if error is equal to SQL.error node rows, that's the error that the email doesn't exist. Then I can return the error, return domain out dot error no user found email. Yeah, that's the error that I want. Not enough, and I have to return nil here. Now if the error was any other, if error is different to nil, that wasn't this one, then I'm gonna return a new error, which is error retrieving user. Error retrieving user out errors. There was an error retrieving the user out. That's all that I want to inform to the final user. Then return nil and error retrieving user out. And if there was no error, then we're gonna return simply the model that we created and a nil error. And that will be all. Now, what's the next step? The next step is to create our database, because in order to check this working. So first of all, here in our API, we have an issue because we have to pass the DB. However, we have to create that DB first. So I'm gonna, let me check in configs. Could I create it right here? What does my API receive? Yeah, I know how to do it. So first of all, here in my internal, let's remove everything, this stuff. So first of all, I'm gonna commit a little change. Git commit. This will be something like repository implemented for register user. Perfect. Now let's create our database. First of all, I'm gonna work at the development process here, where I'm gonna be working with a Docker compose.yam, which, let me see if I can remember everything. Is like something like services. Here it will be my DB service, which will be an image of type Postgres, and ports, I think it's 621, no, 632, 6432. Then the environment variables. I also have here our, how is it called, adminer, with an image adminer, and ports will be 8080, 8080. Yeah. So, but let me check if that's the correct. So I'm gonna Postgres Docker compose. Let me check what's the best approach. Service image Postgres. Let's add at restart always. Since this is for development process, I don't care about having an, I mean, I will later then create a separated Docker compose for production. So in development, I don't want any, how is it called, any volumes like these ones. However, I do want the variables, so let me add them right here. And adminer, this is the adminer that I wanted. Yeah. Oh, this is without these ones. And I want other variables. Let me check all the variables. Postgres password. Yeah, I already have it. Let's put it like couples. Now what else? Postgres user. Something like couples. Everything will be couples. And Postgres DB will be, try to guess it, couples. Yeah, that's everything that I want, and that should be working. Let me check. So first of all, I have to start my Docker machine, and in my environment variable I will need to add that URL to my database. So let's put something like PostgresDB, and I will add it later. Let me check if my Docker is starting up. It's taking a little bit of time, so let me move here and be creating something else. The DB, for the DB, no, here I will call it like services, and in services I'm gonna be creating something like db.go package services, and it will be type it's starting the Docker, no, I mean func new db this will be returning as SQL. Yeah, I have here some a backend running. I'm gonna stop this one. Yeah, I'm already gonna delete this one, and also this one, this one, this one, this one. I'm gonna delete everything. Right now I don't need nothing of this. Yeah. Since it's already started up, then docker compose app in detached mode. And now the database is created. Let me check in my adminer localhost. Well, it seems that, yeah, Postgres, it's couples, login, Postgres connection to facing the port, accepting TCP. DB 5432. Yeah, I mean, it should. Yeah, now it does work. So let's come back to the code in my database creation. I'm just simply gonna check how I did it in my previous project. Here in internal, in database, DB. Yeah, I'm gonna copy and paste this code. And this returns either a database, a successful database initializer, or an error. And the address is something that I have to receive as a string. Yeah, perfect. The address it should come from the environment variables. So now that should work. Let me come back to my config. I need to go to my config. No, to my API. Let's come back to my API, and my API will receive also a DB. It doesn't matter if it's a Postgres or not. It's a DB, and it will be of type SQL.db. Then I have to receive this in my constructor. DB, and then we have to pass it to our repositories. Yeah, now everything should be working. Well, it doesn't, because I have to create the DB. Here, gracefully shut down, start services. Here, at start services. So it will be DB. I need to read the environment variables. So for that, I'm gonna come to the config, and there will be a type of type. Postgres, no. Database, no, yeah, Postgres. Postgres config, which type struct, and this has yeah, let's leave it like address. So here I need a func new Postgres config, which returns out.config, return Postgres config, and then my address will be of type getemp, my Postgres address, and otherwise I won't return nothing. I think that's how I want it. If there was an error, I won't return nothing, so it won't be able to connect, and then my application won't start. So I'm kind of obligating that the address is here at my environment variables. And now how I want the Postgres. Let me copy basically the address. It's this one. Let's come back to my env. It's of type Postgres. Admin is the user, which will be couples. secret is the password, which is also couples, and the name of the database is also couples. Now it should be working, so let's start it. So db_air it's equal to this is services, new Postgres DB, which receives a configuration dot database configuration or Postgres configuration. Yeah, Postgres config, and here will be something like Postgres config is equal to new Postgres config, and then here it will be Postgres config dot address, and then let me check if there was an error. Then we'll simply log dot fatal the error. If everything went fine, I have already the database here. So this will be Postgres DB, and I have it, and I have to pass it here at my server, and that should be working right now. But I have to defer the closing the. I have to close the database. Return db.ping. So let me go back to the main, and here I will be then defer Postgres db.close. Yeah, perfect. Now I have to work with the migrations. So for the migrations, I will be using the migrate package from Golang. It's not from Golang. I mean the Golang migrate package. Migrate Golang database migrations. Golang migrate. Oh yeah, it is from Golang. Well, however, let's check some configuration, some documentation, PostgreSQL, the tutorial, I guess. And what do I care about? I care about the code. So how will my code look like? Yeah, it will be something like this. So after we starting up the database, I need to migrate, run migrations, and this will be this code. So migrate, I need to get my Golang migrate package migrate, it's Golang migrate before, well, here, go get already migrate.new. So the file will be in db migrations. Yeah, that's the path, and the database will be Postgres, I mean configuration Postgres config.address, and then m means error, okay, m up if error is different to nil, and errors is the migrate dot, let me see, error no change. This is the error that I'm looking for, because if the migrate package returns an error if it tries to run up the migrations, but there is no new migrations to run. However, that error for me is not an error. That's completely fine. So if the error is nil, but it's different, and it's different from this one, then yeah, I mean, I don't know why I did this. Then I'm gonna log file the error. In other case, then everything is completely fine. Now what's the error here? I have to remove this. Could not import. Yeah, everything's working. Now let's create our migrations files. And for this, let me check again the documentation. It's something like this. Transactions. Yeah. I'm gonna create here a file which contains all the commands that I will be using throughout the process. So commands is simply for me, this is migration. Maybe I could change this to a YAML file. YAML, yeah. Migrate, create, exec. So this will be exec SQL there, dp migrations, perfect. And this is the, yeah, perfect. Name. So let's run the first one. The first one will be called like Auth. Now I have it right here in migrations. Okay, up and down. So up will be something like, I will be creating one file for groups of tables or related tables. So this one will be the relation between user out and sessions. So let's create these two tables right here. Create table. Oh, however, here I have an issue because user out references users and users, so users needs to be created before. So I will delete these two files, and I will need to first create in my table users. I'm gonna show you what I'm looking. Yeah, because this table depends on users, so I have to first create users. So I have to first write the migration for this table, but for this table will be the, I think that it will be the couple group, which will be temp couples, users, but temp couples, I think that temp couples, users, couples, this thing. Points, however, could also be part of that. These four will be part of that, but I also need countries. So let me, first of all, let's create a migration that it's like, I don't know how to call those tables, like the country tables. It's like help tables. No, like shared. Let's do it something like that. Shared, and then I will create the create table if not exist countries. And let me move this here to see the fields, which will have an ID of type UID, primary key, and then name of type partial or text. What do I prefer? I guess partial with 100 characters. No, text. Let's use text. And here the commas. This is not null. And continent, which is text, not null. And that will be all. For now, that's all. So my down will be drop table if exists countries. Yeah, perfect. Now let's create. I'm back, so let's continue. Now, where was I? Yeah. Let me